So I spent the next month basically working twice as hard, knocking on twice as many doors, cold calling twice as often, sleeping half as much. And finally, by the 11th month, I was basically 1 month away from having to crawl back to my parents' house. I had double ended a $1.8 million sale. Double ended means I repped the buyer and the seller.
Okay.
And I made a $47,000 commission.
Wow.
And that was like from there, that was kind of it for me. I realized what I needed to do.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's episode of Overcoming the Odds. I have a very special guest, Mr. Nick Blatin. He owns a company called Private Money Solutions, where they lend money to real estate investors in order to complete their projects. So thanks a lot for being on today, Nick. Appreciate you.
Have me, bro.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers.
Thank you for inviting us in.
What better way to start a pod than with some whiskey?
I agree. So before we get into what Nick is currently doing, how he got to where he is today, we're gonna rewind a little bit, how he grew up and how he ended up on this path and journey that he's on right now. So Nick, tell us a little bit about, not too long, but how what life was like growing up in LA and how you got into the business and entrepreneur space.
Sure, I would say I had a pretty standard middle class upbringing. Went to both public school and private schools, had friends with money and friends without. And I think I was kind of blessed to be able to see people that had success and that had a lot of resources and opportunities, and yet contrast it with the other side. And from a young age, I was pretty ingrained in trying to determine what the difference was between those two types of people. But overall, I'd say my childhood was amazing and fun, and I grew up here in the San Fernando Valley, in Los Angeles. Um, by high school, to take it back a bit, I used to actually get really good grades my whole life, and I ended up skipping fourth grade from third to fifth. And by the time I was in high school, I had completely started messing up, hanging kind of with the wrong crowd, and ultimately got expelled from high school.
Really?
And when I got kicked out, that was a big wake up call for me of like, this is kind of make it time or break it time. And that was kind of what got me, I would say, into sales, into something where I didn't really have much of a choice, right? A lot of people that were getting jobs had college degrees and whatnot, or experience. I had none.
You didn't go to college?
I started college and I didn't finish.
Okay.
But yeah, I luckily, by the age of 17, was selling makeup door to door. And I learned pretty early on that I was good at sales and good at connecting with people.
How did you, as a straight man, get into selling makeup?
That's a good question. I was sort of scammed into it. So I was looking for jobs online that didn't require a college education.
Okay.
And one of them was called I forget the exact term, but I want to say it was like office manager or sales manager, something like that. And I go into this room and there's like 10 other people getting interviewed. And every one of them, as they walk out, they're like, yes, they're all like happy.
Okay.
And I quickly realized, wow, every single one of us has gotten hired. And the reason for that was this was actually a recruiting company whose job it was basically to get as many salespeople as they can. And then we go out onto the streets and sell makeup door to door. We'd get a pitch, we'd get a script, we do the whole thing. And that's kind of how it happened. I mean, I had no other choice, basically.
So when you find out about door-to-door makeup sales, you never thought maybe I should sell vacuums or knives or Cutco, or you're just like, makeup's my, I'm gonna crush it with makeup.
It's funny you say that because looking back, now I know that there's many types of door-to-door sales. And I've had friends that have done like the Cutco knife sales and these other things you mentioned, even as far as AT&T sales.
Yeah.
But I didn't know any better. To me, it was like the only person that's willing to offer me a job, I felt like. And the moment I realized after about a week or so that there was no cap on how much you can make. It's like you can sell one bag of makeup and you'll make, let's say, $8 commissions in that day. or you can sell 1,000 bags of makeup,
Yeah.
right? And just like the concept of having a no cap, no ceiling limit to how much I can earn got me beyond excited that I was willing to sell anything.
Do you remember any of the makeup script?
Yeah,
Dude,
I
let's
really
let's
do.
let's hear it.
Okay, let's imagine that this pillow is a bag of makeup, right?
Okay.
And you're sitting there, you'd be maybe at a restaurant or maybe shopping at a furniture store or whatever. You're just going about your life.
Okay.
And like, oh, hey, sorry, did you get one yet? Did you get one yet?
I don't wear any makeup.
Oh, it's okay, no problem. Yeah, we were just having this really big blowout, and I ran out of all my other bags, and I didn't want to skip you. You look like the type of guy who has a few girlfriends, right?
Yeah, I do. One.
You have a mom?
One. Yeah.
Awesome. Mother's Day is coming up, man. We're having a 90% off sale. And anyway, you transition from there to
Okay.
connecting with them.
Okay.
And basically, no matter who it was, whether it's a big, strong guy or a woman who obviously likes makeup, we would have kind of a workaround where you'd boost their ego and make them feel like everyone else was buying it and they didn't want to miss out.
Okay.
It was called the keeping up with the Joneses effect.
Okay, gotcha. Which is LA.
100. Now it's keeping up with the Kardashians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are like some main objections you would get, and how'd you overcome them? Like, okay, I only use this certain brand from Ulta or wherever, Sephora. What what were the overcoming objections for that?
So it's a good question. There were a lot of objections that we had learned how to overcome, but my strategy was actually not trying to overcome objections. It was moving on as fast as humanly possible.
Okay.
Because I quickly realized the people that sold the most makeup weren't the people that spent an hour trying to convince someone and ultimately winning.
Right.
The people that sold the most makeup were the people that can talk to 200 people a day instead of 100 people a day.
Right.
You double your odds and you just kind of look for the fast yeses and keep going.
Right.
So that confidence that I got from being able to sell makeup door to door is what gave me the confidence to immediately transition into selling high-end houses, which is how I kind of started in the real estate world, selling homes.
You mentioned gaining the confidence to, sell high-end homes through makeup. How was your makeup sales career? How long did it last, and like how much approximately revenue did you sell?
Yeah, so it lasted a little over a year, so not very long, but long enough
I
to
mean,
realize if I'm good or not at sales.
And a year to sell makeup as a man is still a pretty long time. Like most people, I feel like wouldn't last a week.
Yeah, so the average turnaround time, people would last about 3 to 4 days usually before quitting.
Right.
But they were hiring so many people so often that it was kind of a constantly going business. And yeah, less than 5% of people would even last longer than a month. But I get it. Most people really don't care enough about being successful that they're willing to embarrass themselves or to go through rejection or to have a hard time. And I was willing to go through anything to make money.
Did any of your friends make fun of you?
Yes, I actually ran into a few of my friends on multiple occasions. And there was a particular time where I remember it was a really good friend of mine. He's a really big surfer. And so he was always hanging out in like the Santa Monica, Venice area.
Yeah.
And he was always with girls, always with chicks, living the life. And it was this one summer, it was a weekend. Everyone else was posting all over social media all the fun stuff they were doing. And I'm wearing a full suit, carrying a backpack full of makeup, sweating, like literally sweating. I'm melting. And I'm going through 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, and I run into my friend, and it's him and 3 girls. And my business partner was working with me, and he's like, "You're not allowed to skip anyone."
Oh gosh.
I cannot.
Yeah.
To them. And he's like, "Sorry, that's the rule, man. You can't skip anyone." And I walk up to them, and I'm like, "Hey guys, sorry to bother you."
Kind of like the walk up of shame.
Yeah, and it's not like they made fun of me or anything, but you can just tell like the look of sadness for me in his eyes. Like it was pretty brutal, but I think it was just something inside of me. I said, I don't care how many people are gonna think this is strange or weird.
Okay.
I understand like the long-term vision of what I'm learning here.
Yeah. Okay. So then after a year, you sold how many bags of makeup? What was your biggest month in revenue that you got paid in commissions as a 17, 18 years old selling makeup?
Yeah, at 17 years old, definitely the most I ever made there was a month when I averaged about $200 a day, and I was working 6 days a week.
Okay.
So about, maybe $5,000.
As a 17-year-old kid is not bad.
It was fantastic. It was honestly incredible. I was mind blown that I was able to make that much money at that age, and I felt like I wasn't even working. I can tell what the difficulty of it, but talking to people like how we're doing right now doesn't necessarily feel like a job. It feels like what you already do all day.
Yeah, we're just hanging out, having a drink.
Right. So, I think a lot of people look at it as difficult and uncomfortable, and I did too. But as soon as you change your mindset to, wow, my job is literally talking to people, it opens up a world of simplicity for you.
Right. Beats being in the office.
100%.
Yeah. So what shifted? You're doing good, selling makeup, crushing it, have a good income for your age. What shifted you from makeup to your next venture?
It was one simple question. My uncle, who I used to meet with, my uncle's someone I've always looked up to
Okay.
and would take his advice. And he sits me down and he basically says, Nick, if you are good at sales, why don't you sell something more expensive? And it was just like this. How
Yeah.
it just got really quiet. That's exactly what I did.
It's like the obvious question that you just didn't never thought of.
Right. Like I literally sat there thinking, oh my God, can it be that simple?
Right.
And I'm kind of asking him, I'm like, is it that simple? What do you mean? And he's like, Nick, how many hours do you work? I'm like, I don't know, 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. He's like, great. No one's working harder than you then.
Yeah.
You're already working nearly the max amount of hours a human's willing to work.
Yeah.
But the difference between you and someone wealthy is you sell a bag of makeup and get $8 commission.
Right.
But there's someone who sold a car and maybe they made $800 commission. There's someone who sold a house and maybe they made $80,000 commission. There's someone that sold a company for someone, right? There's M&A advisors and things of that nature.
Right.
So the commissions get larger, but it's the same amount of work. So you might as well sell something more expensive.
Right. So you looked up to your uncle. He was already a businessman.
Yes. My uncle started the private money lending company that I'm partnered in now back in 2001.
Okay, gotcha.
And so he always got everyone in the family the best birthday gifts. I should say my aunt and uncle.
Okay.
I don't want to cut her
Yeah,
out.
yeah, of course.
My aunt and uncle.
Otherwise, you're getting cut off at Christmas this year.
Yeah. They would get everyone the best gifts, holiday gifts, birthday presents. They'd always host the family events at their house. They would always give us pretty much whatever we needed. And I really respected the fact that they were actually elementary school sweethearts.
Right.
They were together since about 3rd or 4th grade. So I just wanted to be like him.
Yeah, of course. No, that's really awesome. Most people, especially when looking for life advice or business advice, they usually ask their broke uncle. And it's funny because like you have a well-off uncle that you ask the right person. You listen to the right person, it sounds like, instead of the wrong person.
I got very, very lucky to have the family that I do. But on that topic, it kind of, what you just said reminds me of someone asked, would you ask Warren Buffett for gym advice?
No.
You wouldn't, right? And
No.
so it's one of those things where if someone's better than me at something or knows more than me about something, I'd love to ask that person more and learn more from that person. But it doesn't necessarily mean all of your mentors are going to be your mentors for everything, right? So a lot of people pick, a personal trainer for their fitness part of their life and their boss or their family member for a success part of their life. And they kind of mix a lot like that. But my uncle is sort of all of those things wrapped in one. So it's pretty special.
That's cool. So he gave you this advice. What was the path that you took after that?
Immediately after he gave me the advice, I right away went and got my real estate license.
Okay.
I couldn't wait to sell something more expensive.
Did you look into anything else like insurance, any other door-to-door opportunities, car sales, or just real estate was right away like, that's what I want to do? I saw Josh Altman on TV and...
I looked into some things, like car sales, for example, but I didn't really know much about cars, and I felt if I was going to sell something more expensive and follow that mantra, I might as well go right away for $1 million homes. I'm blessed to be born and raised in Los Angeles, which, a lot of real estate agents don't have the opportunity to right away sell multi-million-dollar properties.
Right.
They have to work their way up. But when you lived here your whole life, and this is the kind of the makeup of what's in the area, any house that I knock on, in the neighborhood is going to be a multi-million-dollar house.
Yeah. If you're knocking on less than $1 million home, you're probably in the wrong neighborhood over here.
Right. I mean, it basically doesn't exist in LA. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily even mean that everyone in LA is rich. I mean, a lot of these people, like including a lot of people in my family, they bought their house for like 50 grand, like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's worth $2 million.
Right.
So that's kind of it's a blessing and a curse in different ways. But I thought real estate was something I can instantly connect with and do well at right away.
Okay. So you get your real estate license. What was the next step for you? Most people, they never sell a home in their first year or first few months, and then they end up quitting. How did you get to selling your first $1 million home?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question because, like you said, most people never sell a house, and by the time they do, it's kind of too late. They're on the brink of not making enough money and they have to quit.
Yeah.
And most real estate agents do quit. I was 8 months in to having my real estate license, and I've been cold calling and door knocking, and I was making no money.
Okay.
Nothing.
Did you still have a side hustle, like selling makeup or anything, or were you full-time?
Side hustle. I was
Okay.
full-time, just a real estate agent.
And this is at 8, how old were you when you first got licensed?
I was 20 years old.
20, okay.
And I was living off of the savings that I had made from selling makeup door to door.
Okay.
So that wasn't a ton of money. I basically had about a year of life, right? And my uncle, again, sees me not selling any houses, and he basically gives me advice, and he goes, you need to move out of your parents' house. And I remember thinking, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I haven't sold a single house. I haven't made money in 8 months. And now I'm expected to move out and live off of like the remaining $6,000 or $7,000 I have to my name from selling makeup.
Right, 2 months of rent basically in LA.
Like nothing in LA, And he's like, the reason you're not selling any houses is you have no pressure. You can sell nothing, go back home and be comfortable.
Yeah.
You need a squeeze. And so I kind of named this moment in my life the squeeze.
Okay.
Where I move out having no leads, barely a few months of savings, and no income. And the pressure I felt was so immense because I don't know if you remember being 20, but the moment you move out, you have all your friends over.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I finally am out of my parents' house. Your friends come over, girls come over, everything. You're living the dream. And the shame of having to go back and tell everyone, oh, I had to crawl back to my parents' house.
Yeah, you want to avoid that.
Too much for me. So I spent the next month basically working twice as hard, knocking on twice as many doors, cold calling twice as often, sleeping half as much. And finally, by the 11th month, I was basically 1 month away from having to crawl back to my parents' house. I had double-ended a $1.8 million sale. Double-ended means I repped the buyer and the seller.
Okay.
And I made a $47,000 commission.
Wow.
And that was like from there, that was kind of it for me. I realized what I needed to do.
Where did that lead come from?
That lead came from a cold call.
And it was a cold call, expired listing, divorce, foreclosure. What was?
It was an expired listing.
Okay, gotcha.
I can say it's on the 1900 block of Curson Avenue in West Hollywood.
Okay, gotcha.
Never forget it.
That's the one deal you'll never forget.
I will never forget it. And especially, I have a good story about it also. I'll be brief, but the day before closing, I'd already started counting how much money I'm going to make.
Yeah.
And there's something in real estate before the day of actual closing called a final walkthrough.
Okay.
Basically, the buyer goes through the house and makes sure the house is still there how it was when you opened escrow, a month ago.
Right.
And we opened the door for the final walkthrough. Water pours onto our feet.
Oh my gosh.
Literally, the entire house had flooded. It's a 4-story house in Hollywood Hills, and the bathroom on the 4th floor had broke, pipes burst, flooded the entire house all the way down.
Was there still someone living there, or it was an empty home?
They were living there up until like a week before.
So then the house was empty for a week.
Empty for that week when that happened. It was unbelievable. And the guys that I worked for at the time were such good negotiators and deal makers.
Yeah.
And again, this is like, I'm so grateful again for all the people that I've gotten to work with, but they convinced the buyers that this is good news because now the insurance companies are going to have to pay to fix everything.
And now they get to
And
fully
they said
renovate their home.
free renovation.
Yeah.
So we still closed.
Yeah.
It was mind-boggling. It actually turned into a lawsuit years later. Like I was uninvolved.
What?
Like insurance fraud. It was a long story.
Like they think the people buying it had done it on purpose?
I believe no, not them. The seller who had gotten money, who was supposed to repair things for the new buyer,
Okay.
had pocketed a lot of the insurance money instead of using it all towards
the renovations.
Overstated how much things will cost.
Oh, okay.
Is my understanding of it.
Gotcha. That's like something you see in a movie.
Unbelievable.
The young kid, you know, chasing his dream, you know, pretty much broke,
Yeah.
counting the money in his car, like his beater car, counting his check, looking at all the things he's gonna buy, probably already has it in his car, walks in the door, and there goes the commission check.
Literally, and it was a great lesson because I learned never to get excited until the deal closes.
Yeah.
It's a very big mistake that people make in sales, and it sometimes lets people down so heavily when a deal doesn't work out that they literally leave the industry and never come back.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah, so it's brutal, but that's kind of the game, and I learned from there to really to not get excited, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure, especially on huge, massive deals.
Right.
What did it feel like the moment that first check hit your bank account? Going from making $5,000 a month as a 20-year-old kid, $60,000 a year, to you just worked your ass off for 8 months and you made almost what you made the whole year before in one deal.
It was unfathomable. I mean, I might as well have made $10 million.
Of course.
It's that crazy. Like making $47,000 in that moment, it not only solidified that what I was doing wasn't a waste of time, but it also solidified. See, to me, it didn't feel like I made 48 grand in 1 year. And that's how a lot of people looked at it. They're like, oh, big deal, Nick. You worked for a whole year, 11 months to make 47 grand. That's not good. I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it like I made 47 grand
in one transaction.
In one deal.
Yeah.
In one check.
All I have to do is a couple more and it's a really good year.
Right. And so like to me, it was everything. I took a picture of it. I sent it to everyone in a group chat. I had framed it on my wall at one point.
Do you still have it?
Like, again, it might as well have been $10 million. I don't think there's any amount of money I can make today, genuinely. Even if I won the lottery, I'd be very happy. But knowing what I know now about money, if I won the lottery today, I would not be as excited as I was making that 47.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's just different.
Do you still have that framed somewhere?
Don't have it framed anymore, but I have the picture still.
Okay, that's cool. Maybe we'll see if we can get it from you and we'll put it up on here.
That would be fantastic.
So you do that, you close your first deal. After closing that deal, what was the next 12 months, 24 months for you like in real estate?
It was just a giant snowball where I think now every time I called someone, it wasn't, please hire me. I'm a kid. I really want this. It was like, I'm a big dog. I've represented a seller before. I've represented a buyer before. I've made big checks before. This one check.
Yeah.
It felt like every call after that was a different person calling. And it basically went from one deal the first year to about 8 or 9 deals the second year. By the third year, I was already making more money than my parents, for example. So yeah, I think.
What did you roughly do in real estate sales, not commissions, real estate sales, first year, second year, third year?
First year was at 1.8 million, double-ended, so technically 3.6. Second year, I probably did about 15 million.
Okay.
Third year, I did like $55 million. So it had really launched up.
Yeah.
And that year, I was actually named the #1 agent in LA under 25.
And you were 24, 23?
I want to say I was 23 when that happened.
Okay, 23.
Year.
Gotcha. So now you really have a name for yourself in LA.
Yeah, at that point, I would say, and this is kind of as Instagram was becoming really popular, but people were not necessarily posting a lot.
Right.
And if they did post, it would be them having fun or on vacation or whatnot. And I was a pretty early adapter of posting myself working and doing deals. And I would say I would say it worked well because pretty instantly, a lot of my friends and my friends' parents were calling me. Even though I'm this 23-year-old kid, it would be my friends' parents or even my parents' friends who were seeing what I was doing on Facebook or Instagram and calling me to sell their houses. So that was also good evidence for me of how much easier it is to market nowadays.
Yeah.
Instead of having a lunch every day with all 360 people that you can do one post and all 360 people will see it.
Right.
So it was big.
I think a cool point to your story that a lot of people might not get, but that I noticed is when you first got started, it sounded like for that first 11 months, none of your friends were calling you. None of their family was calling you. Your parents' friends weren't calling you to sell their homes. It was after you worked really hard, did a lot of uncomfortable things, door knocking, jumping over people's fences in their $1 million homes, cold calling them, getting probably screamed at on the phone. And then once you had success, then everyone's all of a sudden wanted to start using you.
I'm a big believer in the law of sacrifice. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
And the law of compensation, which essentially those two combined, they state that the universe will reward you and refund you for your efforts.
Yeah.
And I've always experienced that. And it's not always directly how you think it's going to be. It's like if I cold call and door knock and work as hard as I possibly can for 3 months straight, that might result in nothing. I might get no clients from that. But because of how hard I worked, the universe, every time this happens in my life, repays me, and all of a sudden someone calls me and goes, Nick, I've been seeing this or I've been seeing that. I want to sell my $5 million house. I'd like to hire you.
Yeah.
And I experienced that a ton of times during the real estate game. And then again, in my current, private money lending world, it's the exact same thing. And I'm convinced that it's a fact. Every time you work hard, you get lucky twice as often.
Yeah, I like that. Most people, I like that. Every time you work hard, you get twice as lucky. What are some interesting stories you had in your real estate agent days? Anything interesting you've worked with anyone, fun? Any crazy deals? What any fun stories?
Yeah, in my real estate agent days, I had a lot of fun stories. I think the main exciting thing about it to me was basically seeing how accessible it was and how many people there were that made money. And so one of the things I would do, like I mentioned, is I would cold call people that had tried to sell their house before. They're called expired listings. And when you're in LA, the people that are trying to sell their houses, yes, there's regular people and there's entrepreneurs and whatnot, but a lot of them are famous athletes and famous actors and actresses.
Yeah, they got to move around and go different places for different, seasons of their life or whatever.
Sure. And the difficult part was a lot of times these people would have their homes and LLCs or trusts and whatnot. And so I would have to dig around until I would finally find out like their actual phone number. And so I don't know if I want to say their name, but there was this one really, really famous A-list basketball player that I had finally gotten his number.
That's an athlete, you could say it.
Yeah, he's I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it because of what he said.
Okay, what was he? The Clippers or the Lakers?
Lakers.
Okay, Lakers basketball player.
Both.
Oh, that narrows
At
it down.
different times.
It might narrow. We might be able to find out now who this was based on the year.
And I remember I called him and I was like, trying to convince him to sell his house again. And he was like, "How the fuck did you get my number?" And I was like, the same way that I worked hard to find your number is how I'm gonna work to find buyers for you.
I like that. That's good.
He was like, "Man, that's a really good line."
That is pretty good.
He's like, "All right, we should chat."
Because I've heard that before too. How'd you get my number? Whether I was calling a business owner or someone to sell their house or buy their house or whatever. How'd you get? I would just tell them like, hey, the world's a crazy place. It's crazy what you can find on the internet.
Yeah, that's a good line too.
And then they would throw them off. They're like, well, yeah, we live in 2024 now, 2025.
Yeah.
By the time this is posted.
Yeah.
The world's all the internet, all information is free on the internet.
Yeah.
Or for a small fee, you can pretty much find out anything. Yeah. Now it's a lot more easy and accessible, especially with, paying a few bucks, you can get way more information at a lot faster.
I've DM'd people that are worth well into the 100 millions on Instagram, and they've responded. And it's funny because often those are the people that they don't have like a million followers. They're like no one. They have like
Oh, they have
200
200.
followers.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Though when I see those accounts with like 200, and you could tell it's a real person, they have like 200 followers and they follow like 2,000 people, but then they're posting in Dubai and going like all over the world and stuff. It's like they literally just don't care about social media, but their life is so good.
Yeah, or out of those 200 followers, it'll be like, you know, like Mark Cuban. Or like,
Yeah.
It'll be like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you end up selling that guy's house?
I did not end up selling that guy's house, but it was not because of anything we did. He ended up not even selling at all.
Oh, kept it. Okay.
Yeah, so, but I mean, it was again just
That's a,
evidence
yeah.
of kind of what works and what doesn't.
That is a pretty cool story. I like that. So you achieved most people's lifelong goal. You became the #1 real estate agent in Los Angeles under the age of 25 years old, sold almost $60 million. Your career's going great. You're making the most money you ever have probably made.
Yeah.
And now you switch careers.
Oh yeah.
It sounds like an insane thing to do.
Yes.
What sparked that?
Yeah, so the main thing that sparked it is I didn't like being a real estate agent.
Okay.
I genuinely didn't. I really liked making money, and obviously that was my goal getting into real estate in the first place. But once you kind of get into that world, you sell your soul. And what I mean by that is when, you know, if you wanted to buy a house and you work a 9 to 5 job, when would you go see houses?
Weekends.
Weekends and evenings.
Yeah.
And so that's when I worked, when normal people were off work. And so I would miss vacations, I would miss family events, I would miss birthdays, I would miss all the fun things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
In exchange for making money. And so pretty early on, even though you know, when you're 20 years old or 21 years old and you make 6 figures, you feel like you're on top of the world.
Yeah.
But I realized like why all the podcasts and why all the people say, oh, money isn't everything, money doesn't buy you happiness, because I was not happy. And I started begging my uncle, again, who I'd looked up to earlier. I was like, can I come and work for you? I want to do what you do. I want to do private money lending.
Right.
And he goes, Nick, you have no gray hair and no one's gonna want to work with you. You're too young. And this is a little crass, but he goes, no one's gonna want to spread their financial legs for you.
Right.
And he goes like that. And like, I'll never forget him saying that, but basically I was too green, right? I had gotten expelled from high school. I'd been selling real estate for maybe a year or two by the time I realized this. And it wasn't until that 3rd or 4th year when that publication came out, LA's #1 agent under 25, I had showed it to my uncle and he goes, okay, you should join the family business now.
He goes, now you're ready.
Now you're ready, you know? And so I kind of had to prove to not only to him, but to myself that I'd be ready to enter that world, which is much more, I would say, complicated than being a real estate agent.
Yeah, real estate agent. I mean, it is a difficult job. I'm not going to downplay it.
Difficult, but simple.
Right.
You cold call, people say yes or no, you know, you go to open houses, it's not extremely complicated. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to be a real estate agent.
You have your brokerage help you out with the paperwork, TC, transaction coordinator, and
right, you have people do most of the actual,
and you relationship build with clients and make sure they're happy, and it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Okay, so now you get into private money. You're starting over from scratch, a brand new business. What is it like since you have already accomplished what you accomplished? What was your mindset going into starting, still real estate based, but a different part of the industry? What was your mindset going into that, like your approach?
Terrifying. It's very difficult to go from making what you think is a ton of money, more than you ever thought you were going to make, to quitting, starting over somewhere. And especially in this business, because just like being an agent, this is also commission only. And so there's always that fear in the back of your mind when you switch into something, particularly in sales or in entrepreneurship, where it's like, what if nobody buys what I'm selling?
Yeah.
Right? What if I don't make any money? What if I made a mistake doing this? What if I should have stayed at my last job? And so I think that's natural, and I went through what normal people go through. But luckily, I had maintained a lot of the relationships I had made while being a real estate agent. And
With clients, other agents, what
With
kind of
other
really?
agents,
Okay.
but more importantly with mortgage brokers.
Okay.
Mortgage brokers like being friends with real estate agents because they know that when the agent has a client who's buying a house, they're going to send it over to their mortgage broker friend, and the mortgage broker can make a commission
Right.
doing the loan. So I had reached out to all the mortgage brokers that I was friends with from back in the agent days and said, hey everyone, guess what? Now I'm doing private money lending. And if you ever have a client who basically can't get a bank loan for whatever reason, our slogan is when the banks say no, private money is the only way to go.
Okay. Gotcha.
And pretty early on, thankfully, I was able to get a few clients and fund a few private loans. And again, it just takes really the first few customers to give yourself the confidence, like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I think the main difference between private money lending and real estate as an agent is the lending side is numbers and math. Things are black and white, you know? When you're an agent, it's a lot of architecture and speaking about, oh, open floor plan,
Yeah.
high ceilings.
The emotional part of it.
Yeah, and
Imagine your family creating memories here.
Right, there's a lot of nonsense and things that are kind of fugazi, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, on the lending side, I loved it immediately from my very first deal. I knew I'm gonna do this forever.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to do anything else, and I still feel that way.
For someone who doesn't know private money, they kind of know what real estate is. Give a quick explanation with an example of like a deal. What is private money? What is your job?
Sure. Basically, I'm funding mortgages for people that cannot get a bank loan or don't have time to get a bank loan.
Okay.
So, a few really quick examples. Let's say you found a house you want to buy. You're married, whatever the case may be. I don't know. You're buying this house, and you are starting to work on a bank loan, but you only agreed to a 10-day escrow. And this happens more than you think. Someone did a short escrow. The bank says, we're not able to fund your loan in 10 days. You qualify for this mortgage. We're going to give you a mortgage, but it's going to take 2 months or a month or whatever it is. That person will come to me and basically say, Nick, I need a quick bridge loan. I'll give them that mortgage for the same amount they were going to get when buying the house through a bank.
Because you see the bank approval.
Right. We have evidence.
Okay.
We can see their credit, their income, everything we need to
Okay.
feel comfortable. And the difference is I don't need 30 days because I don't need the approval of a fund or a line of credit or anything like the
Any government agency.
Right, no government agency. If I say I like this deal, I like you, I like the borrower, I like the property, we have investors, we call them, the next day they're sending the wire. And so people mainly call us for speed. Once they close, so meaning once I fund the loan, the borrower now owns that house that they just purchased. Now that they're not in a rush, they can take that 2 months to go get the bank loan and then they'll pay us off.
Okay, gotcha.
So all of our loans are short term, usually 1 to 2 year. And our space is known as multiple things, but the main 3 things people say is private money lending, hard money lending, and bridge lending, which they have slightly different definitions, but to me, they're all one and the same. They're all what I do.
Okay, gotcha. What would be like another example besides just, because you mentioned speed and they can't afford to get a bank mortgage. Why else would someone get a hard money loan?
Yeah, so there's actually 3 main reasons. Number 1 is the one we just said. Speed.
Okay.
Someone wants to close quickly and get money quickly. Number 2 is tax returns. So that means if you are let's say a celebrity or a big entrepreneur, right? Let's say you're a rapper, you're an artist.
Okay.
Okay. Rapper drops an album, 2024. Okay. Album does great. Rapper goes on tour, makes a ton of money selling albums and merch and this and that, right? Following year, the tour is over. They're not dropping another album back-to-back years.
Right.
People aren't buying their merch anymore. They're not relevant. They're kind of out of the public eye.
Yep.
They go from making $10 million one year to $500,000 the next year.
Right.
Okay. They go to the bank and they go, I want to buy this $5 million house. I want to qualify for this $5 million, mortgage or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Bank goes, sorry, this year you only made $500,000, you don't qualify. You can't afford this house.
Right.
I look at that person and I say, I know you can afford this house. I know you can qualify. And if you can't pay us back, you're putting up your own house as collateral.
Right.
So to me, it makes sense either way. Either they pay me back and I make a very high interest return, which is the goal of hard money lending.
Right.
We make high interest loans. Or they don't pay me back and we can foreclose and potentially force an auction or eventually end up owning the property. Now, it's not something we want to do. We don't
Right.
want to take anyone's house, but just the fact that the person borrowing the money knows that their house is potentially at risk
Right.
ensures that they're going to pay us back.
It's the same way a bank protects their loans.
It's the exact same thing as a bank. There's a promissory note, there's a deed of trust, there's loan documents, there's title insurance, there's escrow. All these things that a regular bank does, it's the same paperwork that we do. We just do it faster.
Okay, gotcha. There's no like loan shark, like good old days, breaking kneecaps.
You know, there's a lot of laws. If people hear hard money and they think that,
Right.
they really do.
I'm sure that's what a bunch of people probably thought when they're listening to this right now.
Sure. And I know you're joking, but a lot of people genuinely think this is some sort of like loan shark thing. But there's a lot of laws nowadays. They're called predatory lending laws or usury laws.
Yeah.
And you're very, very restricted. So all we can really do is basically say, if you don't pay back, we're going to put a default on your property. And most people just simply don't want to lose their home.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially if they're making a few payments and
Right.
coming out of pocket. Yeah.
Right. I don't need to go and beat someone up if
Yeah.
they don't pay me, which I can do. I'm a trained MMA fighter. I don't know
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
remember when we talked about this before. But yeah, I've trained MMA for 12 years of my life. And yeah, it's very straightforward. It's exactly what a bank does.
Yeah.
Have you owned a house before? Let's say you have.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a mortgage payment every month. What happens when you don't make your payment?
The bank comes knocking.
Bad things happen.
Yep.
That's exactly right. So it's the same exact thing for us.
So those are two reasons. What's the third reason someone gets a hard money private money loan?
Third most common reason is construction.
Okay.
So a lot of banks are scared to lend on a house that's half built or halfway through a remodel, or maybe they're drywalled up but they haven't put in the kitchen yet, or whatever
Right.
the case is.
They need like certain finishing touches in order to qualify for a traditional.
Yes, there's a reason though. If the person building a house stops paying their mortgage, right, and the bank takes back the property, what is a bank going to do with a half-built house?
They're not going to finish it.
They're not a contractor.
Right.
And it's not even a person. It's not like there's just like, oh, John, who owns Wells Fargo, John's going to call a contractor to finish building this property. No.
Yeah.
So most banks have rules against it, and they typically want to see what's called a C of O, a certificate of occupancy. Once a bank sees that, they're happy to lend you, up to 80% or 90%
Right.
of the value.
Which means the house is certified to be livable in.
Exactly. You're safe. The city grants you permission to now live here, and a bank will give you a loan. Without that, some people are very ambitious, and they might have $1 million and they'll put $200,000 towards remodeling this house, 200 towards this house, 200 towards, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times people get strapped for cash. It's not necessarily because they're broke.
Yep.
It's not because they're losers. It's not anything like that. It's literally because they have so many projects going on at the same time and they mismanage their money.
Yeah.
And so on one of those 5 or 2 of those 5 projects, they might say, Nick, I need an extra $1 million to finish building this house.
Right. That's going to be worth $20 million.
That's going to be worth, exactly. It's going to be worth an enormous amount of money. We're going to make this giant profit. And I always basically say, listen, I'm happy for you, but I'm not your business partner. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not sharing in your profits. So
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily interested in that. What is your house worth today?
Right.
Okay. Whatever it's worth today, I'll lend you up to usually, let's say, 60 or 70% of that value.
Okay.
That way, if you stop building today, you get into a car crash, you flee to Mexico, you block my number and never talk to me again.
Yeah.
I at least am at a good leverage position where I can take over that property, finish it myself, and sell it, for a profit if I needed to.
Right. Makes sense. It sounds simple. Why do more people not do what you do?
The hardest and most difficult part, I think, about what I do is raising the money.
Okay.
So I do approximately, it depends on the month, but let's say between 15 million and 30 million dollars a month in loans.
Okay. And those are all short term, 1 to 2 years.
All short term, 1 to 2 year loans.
Okay.
Right? So you come to me, say, Nick, I need to buy this house in 10 days. I need a hard money loan. I need $2 million.
Are these all California based?
All California based. Let's say you need $2 million. Where do I get this $2 million to give you?
Yeah. The banks, I mean, you're not getting it from a bank.
I'm not getting it from a bank.
Right.
Where do you think I'm getting it?
Well, I know where you're getting it.
I'm,
Where do you guys think he's getting it from?
Where do you think I'm getting it from? I'll tell you where. I'm getting it from high net worth individuals that like lending out their money who make a very nice return, collateralized by real estate. This is the highest rate of return you can make on a collateralized investment. Okay, it's hard money lending. So the reason most people don't or cannot do what I do is because they simply don't have access to enough capital.
Okay.
And they don't have enough wealthy friends. Again, I think this is why I got lucky in the way that things had proceeded from selling makeup to real estate agency to this, because by the time I'd gotten through those other factors, I had met so many people and made so many friends and so many connections that as soon as I was trying to raise money, the army backing me was already there.
Right.
And it's one of those things where you kind of have to think long term before you know what the connections are going to be there.
Sure, I agree.
One quick example of this that I think could be helpful to people watching, especially, is when I first started being a real estate agent, so I'm 20 years old. Every single day, I'd go on Facebook. I would look up whose birthday it was on the little Facebook thing, and I would wish happy birthday to everyone. And if they wanted to engage back, some people just like it and say thank you, but if they engage back, I'd have a full conversation.
Right.
Every day I would do that for years. People I've never talked to. People like, you go to middle school or high school with someone, you're still friends on Facebook, you never talk to them.
Yeah.
I would just do it for every single person, not knowing what I'm going to use these connections for, but I just knew the more people you can have in your network that you're still in touch with, that you don't have to randomly reach out to, oh, let's reconnect after 5 years, the people you're always in touch with, it's going to be valuable at some point.
Right.
And so that's a huge tip that can help anyone, even if you're not in business right now and you're not in sales right now and you have no use for your network, start building it now. So by the time you decide to finally jump into whatever you're going to do, you'll have those people that you've already been in touch with,
right,
and they'll be ready to want to work with you.
Yeah, it's like the saying goes, your network is your net worth.
Yes, 100%.
I like that.
And on that topic, another good saying is, everyone says, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
I don't agree with that either. It's who knows you.
Right.
You
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's just a fact. I know who Kim Kardashian is,
but she doesn't know you.
She doesn't know me, so it doesn't do me any good, knowing Kim Kardashian.
I've met so and so one time, but they're not gonna pick up your phone call.
Exactly.
Yeah, unless you find their number online.
Exactly. And you kind of, you can see how it gets difficult and why most people aren't willing to put in this work. If you ask the average person, how many friends are you still with, or how many friends do you still have from high school?
Right.
They might say, oh, this group of 3 people or this group of 5 people, or no friends from high school.
Yeah.
If you were smart and you were looking long term, you'd have stayed in touch with every single person you knew from high school, because you cannot possibly predict who's going to be successful and who won't.
100%.
Who's going to end up crossing paths with you and who won't.
Sometimes it's the biggest losers or people you would never expect to do or be something that go on to accomplish great things.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly right. And not only that, it takes the commitment then of, okay, year 1, you're in touch with the 100 people that you knew from high school, let's say. Year 2, you've met another, 20 people throughout that year working and whatnot. Now you have to stay in touch with 120 people. Then it's 200 people. Then it's 500 people. Then it's 1,000. I mean, it keeps going and going and going and going. And it's one of those things that it does not end until you feel like you're ready to take your foot off the gas.
It's true. Have you ever read the book Never Eat Alone?
Keith Ferrazzi.
Yeah.
Fantastic book.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite books ever.
I agree.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to get Keith on the podcast. He lives right here in Hollywood Hills.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, I don't know. I don't think I ever told you. I used to work for him.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a great book.
But prior to that, like I just read his book forever, and literally like everything we're talking about with relationships is like hammered in that book.
Yeah, man. That's
super good.
Fantastic book. I agree.
So you did
The Keith.
Yes, my man Keith. You do 15 to 30 million a month in loans, short term. Annually, that's, I don't know what that comes out to. 30 times 12, 360 million on a high end.
Let's say we average about $250 million a year. $250 million, excuse me. $250 million or so in loans.
In loans, okay. And that's all privately raised between you and your uncle is now your business partner, right?
Yeah, 100% private, high net worth individuals. No lines of credit, no fund, nothing like that. It's literally, someone calls me, Nick, I want to buy a $3 million house. I'm putting $1 million down. Can you give me the remaining $2 million?
Yeah.
John, I have someone buying a house in Malibu. They're willing to pay you 12% interest. Can you do it?
Yeah.
No? Okay. Fred,
yeah.
You just keep going down.
And these people range from, John over here has sold his company for $100 million, he has 20 million. He just wants to, allocate here to, friends you went to high school with, their parents have a 401k that they're making 6% on and they want to self-direct it and make 15%.
Yeah, the investors, it's a pretty shocking range of people. I mean, it can be as simple as someone our age who's been working hard during their 20s and now they have, $200,000 saved up. Or it could be someone that sold their company, which we have one of our biggest investors sold his company for $1.3 billion.
Wow.
And he just started investing with us about a year ago.
Okay.
He goes, listen, I don't really know you guys yet, so I'm going to dip my toe with you for $5 million. Which the average person, obviously, that's absolutely nuts. But that $5 million turned to $50 million. Now it's nearing closer to $100 million. So he just kind of keeps adding more money into this type of investment and away from traditional stocks and owning real estate. And then everywhere in between, doctors, lawyers, we have a few athlete investors, anyone with money that's looking for an alternative solution to earning a double-digit return, usually in the range of 10 to 15%. There's not very many ways to make that much money safely.
Right. What would you say the biggest difference, very short, is between investing and loaning with you in private money versus, this big corporate hedge fund or whatever, real estate fund?
The obvious and clear difference is that whatever loan someone funds with me, they know what they're going to make.
Okay.
So if I call you and say, you're lending money to this person on this deal at this address with this credit score and blah, 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 they've agreed to pay you 14% interest. That's it. You're getting 14% interest. So if you invest $1 million into this deal, you're going to make 140 grand a year, right?
Right.
Most people don't have that access, right? They don't have that. They didn't know that was possible. Wow, all I have to do is make $1 million one time.
Yeah.
One time. Save $1 million. And I can, for the rest of my life, make 140 grand passively.
Right. And if they don't touch it, it's going to grow.
Right. Or they can, that loan pays back, they go into another loan. This time it's at 12%. Next time it's at 15%.
Right.
Next time, instead of $1 million, now you have 1.1 million, right? It just keeps going and going and going. And the thing about corporate hedge funds, I mean, any sort of other investment for the most part, is you just don't really know what's going to happen. You can run your numbers and you can calculate and you can guesstimate and you can look at history and all these other things, but it's a lot of guessing.
Yeah.
The only people that really, really, truly know what's going to happen are most likely billionaires.
Yeah, of course.
Right? If you told me I know that this meme is going up, this meme's going to 10x for sure.
Yeah.
Great, put all your money in it.
Right. Makes sense.
This stock is going to 2x this year for sure. Great, put all your money in it.
Yep, exactly. And it's not backed by anything.
Right.
This is all backed by real estate. Something physical, tangible. You're not hoping the market goes up or, this Reddit group blows up this investment or whatever. And by the way, guys, none of this is real financial advice. This is all just personal experience. Disclaimer. Any interesting loans or people you've worked with that you can share with, that you've done loans for, or examples or anything?
Sure, I can say this. We have a lot of, probably a surprising amount of celebrity clientele, mainly because of the reason I told you earlier, where
Right.
movie stars or athletes or whatnot, then, not so much athletes actually, but musicians or actors, they'll make a lot of money one year and not the next. I have a good example for you.
Okay.
And again, I can't really say names, but big rapper
Okay.
was buying a house. Everyone knows this person. Was buying a house in Calabasas and didn't have great credit, but had extreme income. I'm talking 10 million plus.
Right.
Many years in a row.
Can we get a hint?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, we want to try to get something good.
I know. I'll need to think. Honestly, I'll need to think of it.
We're gonna have to talk to the
lot to say.
we're gonna have to talk to the legal team.
Sure, I have fine after the rapper. I have another good one.
Okay.
Anyway, this rapper didn't have great credit, but had amazing income, had a lot of assets, had a lot of cash savings, and they were buying a house in Calabasas for, I think it was $6 million. This was a couple years ago, and they were basically like, if I put a 30% down payment, which is more than what most people put buying a
Right.
house, would you give me this loan? And just off his income alone, you can tell, literally within a couple months, this guy can pay me back in cash if he needs to.
Right.
And the banks would not give this guy a loan. Like, it's pretty shocking how strict banks are. But anyway, we gave him the loan. In the meantime, he paid our investors out of 12% interest rates. My investors are happy. And at the end, he ends up refinancing that property with the bank after he fixes credit.
Right.
So that's a very common thing. Another, I would say, relevant story on the topic is really big Victoria's Secret model.
Okay.
Okay. She's retired. She doesn't really make money anymore, but during the course of her career, she had made a lot of money. Okay. She decides she wants to make a return to the industry.
Okay.
So she wants to make her return while launching basically I forgot, it was like some sort of beauty product, right?
Okay.
She needs money to create this beauty product, to research the beauty product, to manufacture the beauty product, right? But because she's been retired a few years, she goes to the bank, asks for a loan, and
A business loan.
business loan,
Okay, so this isn't for backed by real estate.
right?
Okay.
She asks for a business loan, but she offers her real estate as collateral as well.
Okay.
And they basically go, you haven't made money in 5 years.
Okay.
You don't qualify. You're not going to be able to pay us back.
Okay.
I look at this person,
And she has probably millions of followers and supporters and
20 million plus followers.
Okay.
She's the type of person, she can post, one advertisement post, someone will pay her like, $1 million or
Right.
whatever it is.
okay.
And in addition, she has a free and clear house here in Los Angeles.
Worth approximately.
Well over $10 million.
Okay.
There's no mortgage on it.
Right.
Okay. She only needs $2.5 million to start this business. So I'm like, let me get this straight. If I give you a $2.5 million loan, you'll give me a $10+ million property as collateral.
Right.
And in the meantime, you're going to pay our investors 12% interest. Sounds like a win-win to me.
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
We either make 12% return on our money, which is great, or she doesn't pay us back. We lose the $2.5 million, and now we own a $10 million house for free.
Right.
Or for 2.5.
For 2.5 million. Yeah. At 25%.
Once you understand the concept, and it's a very simple concept, when you understand the concept of the collateral being worth more than the loan, you understand how simple hard money lending
Right.
is
I
in
think-
terms of the safety.
It sounds like the key for you guys was you're only lending up to 60 to 70% versus the mistake a lot of people make is they go 80, 90% plus, which if there's a slight market correction, that's how there's turmoil and causes problems.
Brother, that's exactly right. You have to prepare for it. The borrower could lose their job, the borrower can stop working, the borrower can pass away, and the market can crash. Tomorrow's 2008, and that $10 million house is only worth $7 million.
Yeah.
Right?
30% correction.
Right. And in LA, it's unlikely to be that severe, but nonetheless, you pick a number where you feel if tomorrow was 2008, this neighborhood would crash this much,
Right.
right? And thankfully, because we've already gone through 2008, we have all of that data and all those metrics of which neighborhoods drop by how much. Um, Unfortunately, the neighborhoods that are not as wealthy drop much more.
Right.
So if someone has a $500,000 house, that house might go down, only 250K in value, but that's a 50% drop.
Right.
Right? Whereas that $10 million house might go down to 9 or 8 million. But the moment it gets that low, a lot of other wealthy people go, wow, I can buy a $10 million house for 8 million right now. That's
Right.
a steal.
Right.
So those houses tend to keep their value because there's always demand to live by the water.
Right.
Rich people always want to live by the water.
Right. Or they want to live in Beverly
There's
Hills.
always demand to live in the Beverly Hills Flats by Rodeo. There's always demand to live in the Hollywood Hills with views.
Right.
No matter how bad the economy gets, wealthy people want to live there.
Yep.
And so inherently, those are the best places to lend because they retain their money.
Right.
Or they retain their value.
Right. So now in this time of where you're at in your business, life's great, you're making a lot of money, you're doing well, you're successful. What's currently your biggest problem in your life or business right now?
Biggest problem is, I wouldn't even call it a problem. I would just say the thing I'm trying to speed up how quickly this happens is right now we have a little over $450 million loaned out.
Okay.
And you can imagine person by person, this guy has...
How many investors is that approximately between?
200 investors.
200 investors for almost $500 million.
Right. So average investor has, let's say, 2 million.
Okay.
And there's a big range. Like I said, there's people with 200K and there's people with literally 70 million plus of us.
Okay.
But I want to get it to $1 billion.
Okay.
And I get a lot of offers, frankly. A lot of warehouse lines of credit and people that start funds and things like that, they want to give us money because they see this as a way to make easy returns with collateral.
Right.
The problem is most of these capital sources like family offices or institutional lines of credit or warehouse lines, they all want to become the boss. They basically say, we'll give you this $500 million to lend out, but I want a full appraisal on every property. I want my lawyers to review before we do anything. I want, they have a whole team of people. And by the time all these people approve anything, we lost the deal.
Right.
Right? People call me because I can send money later that week.
Right. All your value, that's what builds your value, essentially.
Right. My value is by having individual friends or family or whoever that I can call to send money the next day. And so I would say my biggest problem is I get more loan requests than I can handle.
That are qualified loans.
Good loan requests. In total, in general, I get about 600 loan requests per month.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 100 of those are good.
Okay.
So 1 in 6. And then we quote those and we end up winning, 15 to 20, let's say, loans per month.
Okay.
But if tomorrow I had a billionaire friend and the billionaire friend goes, Nick, here's another $500 million for you to lend out.
Yeah.
I would call every person that I know and I'd say, we're now doing, instead of charging 15% interest, we're charging 12. Instead of charging 2 origination points, we're charging 1.
Right.
And everyone would flood and I would basically be able to double or triple my volume overnight because I'm in a rare business where the demand is there always.
Yeah.
It's the supply that's usually lacking.
Makes sense.
That's my problem. I don't have a billionaire friend.
Gotcha. You have a client right now that he just sold for 1.3 billion. It's just gonna take some time to you gotta date him before you marry him.
That's coming in. But I'd like 4 or 5 of those.
All right. Well, any billionaires watching this,
give me a call.
I mean, I'm sure we know a couple. It's just getting some money from them. Billionaires invest in crazy things.
Right.
Cool. Wrapping up. What would be one piece of advice you would give to your 17-year-old self before you started any business, selling makeup, anything? What would be a piece of advice?
I would tell myself probably exactly what my uncle told me, which is that sales is the cheat code to life, and sell things as expensive as possible as quickly as you can. And I think third, and most importantly, find a good mentor in whatever you want to do. You know, there's three types of people in this world. There's people that learn from their own mistakes, there's people that learn from other people's mistakes, and there's people that never learn.
Yeah.
And the best case scenario is you are the person that learns from other people's mistakes.
Right.
You know, most of the time, anyone who runs a successful business will say, oh, if I only knew this, right? They had all these failures in their first 10 years or 15 years or 20 years of running their business, but now they wouldn't make those mistakes again.
Right.
So imagine when you're starting your business, you can sit next to that person and they tell you, hey, these are the 20 years of lessons I learned. Now you can start off your career with that,
right,
with those lessons.
Right.
Anyone can do that. Anyone can access these people. Most successful people want to share. They're not.
True.
They're not really gatekeeping. Maybe a billionaire or something.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a famous person, sure.
But even still, then there's access. It's just, you know, you got to work a little harder for it.
Yeah, maybe you have to work hard, but I think most people respect a young hustler that's looking for that information, that's hungry, that shows up every day
with pure intentions.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're in the sales world, you want to duplicate yourself anyway.
Yeah.
You'd love to hire a 20-year-old kid who wants to be you.
Right.
Because then they'll make sales for you. You don't necessarily have to go out and work anymore. You now have this young hustler bringing you deals.
Yeah, it's an investment.
That's a great investment. Give someone your knowledge and they give you money.
Yeah.
You know,
it's beautiful.
It's fantastic.
Next thing, if someone is interested in investing or learning more about hard money loans or needs one, where can they find you? Yeah, best way probably as of now would be to reach out to me on Instagram. So my Instagram is just at Nick Blatin, my name, NickBlatin. I'm pretty easy to find thereafter. My phone number is probably everywhere. Maybe I shouldn't say that in case this it's gonna get spammed and but you said the wrong thing. Fairly easy to reach. Our company is Private Money Solutions. We have a website, we have a phone number, we have an email on there, privatemoneysolutions.com. I would say that's probably the best way, man. Awesome, I love it. And last thing, who is one person that once this podcast blows up that you think we can get on here that would provide a lot of value? When this blows up, one of my good friends is a former Super Bowl MVP winner. Okay. I think that probably someone we can all learn from, definitely. Sweet. Dude, I'm excited. That's going to be the goal we work towards. So cheers to filming together finally. Cheers. Thanks for having me, bro.